So thanks, Aaron. So who do we have on the telephone? You probably got to unmute yourself to talk.
That's me. Sorry, Dee, that's me, Christine.
Oh, great. Okay, so thank you. That's Christine Lee, who is the Student Placement Manager. And I'd just like to acknowledge the staff because it is 5:30 and they're going above and beyond to make sure you're all trained and ready to go. So thank you all, thank them all, and now we're going to get cracking. So what I'd like you to do is make sure you've got a pen and paper because I'm going to ask you to save your questions until the end. Because most of the questions will probably be answered as we progress through. Deanna, could you just make a note of who's here and who's not, etc., so that we're pretty clear that everyone was covered. Save the questions till the end. I'm going to go quite quickly. There will be a recording. You can watch the recording if there's some pieces that didn't make sense to you or you've got any questions. Now, the questions will be answered tonight by me, but after this, this placement reverts back to who should be looking after it, which is the placement coordinators in your campuses. You all know who your placement coordinator is. And also Deanna Booth, who's our Brisbane team leader. She's team leader for all of placement, but she sits on Brisbane campus, has been doing a lot of the extra coordination work around this. So if it's a bit more technical question and your coordinator can't answer the question, then Deanna will. And if she can't, she'll refer it to me. So that's just to let you know who's who in the Zoom. Now, when you may or may not be aware of how this happened. We ran a pilot program before this round of recruitment of students for SAE. Now, I have to say the pilot program went incredibly well in most cases because there were so many people who were really in the program and driving it and helping to make everything work. And there were, student meetings together to swap ideas. There's a lot of input. There were also some very, very strong managers at SAE who really grabbed it with both hands and ran with it and got right behind the program. And then we knew that the structure worked and the placement worked, so we all kind of said, okay, let's go and do it again. And we took our hands off a bit too much. And as a result, some things have fallen out of place. And that's why I needed to have this session with you today, because we need to get everything back in place so that it's a really strong placement. You're all safe, you're all clear, and we want to take away some of the uncertainty that has crept in around how is this thing supposed to work. So that's my intention tonight. So by the end of it, you should all be really crystal clear on how it all works. Now, the main things, I'm going to just go through the handbook to start with, then I'm going to talk about dealing with clients in crisis. Because as a couple of you know, you've experienced having clients, suicidal clients who've come in for a counselling session, and that's a very, very stressful period for a student counsellor. And we realised that we didn't have you well enough resourced so that you knew exactly how to handle those situations, you knew who to call, you knew what to do with it. So that's a part of tonight's training as well. So if you are faced with that at any point in the future, you'll be ready to go. Okay? So let me get cracking with the book. I'm just going to share my screen now. Now, many of you have read this handbook, but I've just spent the best part of a full day editing it. So I now need you to read it again because things have changed. It's not the same as it was before. There's quite a few new additions or edits to some of the contacts, details, processes, all sorts of things. So please don't presume you already know. You probably don't, because whatever you thought you knew or whatever is actually happening on your campus may be different to this. Now, please make notes along the way. If I say something, this is how it works, this is what's supposed to be happening. If that's not happening on your campus, I want you to make a note because we need to find out about all this. I'm training the SAE managers next week, and I need a comprehensive list of the things that they're not doing or haven't been doing, mostly because they didn't know they had to. We didn't train them properly. There's a couple of new managers in place that I didn't even know about. So a whole lot of stuff has now come to light, hence the training, and we're about to sort the whole lot out. All right, so the table of contents is up to date. So if you're looking for something in particular, you can use the table of contents when you're working through your handbook to get to the piece you particularly need. You know the context. Now, when we did the pilot, we had Byron Bay and Perth. Unfortunately, those were not successful because they didn't get enough clients. So we took them out. However, and that there's no Byron and Perth right now. However, SAE management have requested that we put them back in because they're so impressed with the work that you guys are doing on campus, on their campuses, that they want all of their students to have access to this service. So they've asked us to put back Perth and SAE, Perth and Byron Bay, which I'm happy to do, but only with certain agreements on their part that they will get the number of clients that are required. So that's how we're going to work that one. So the placements, there should be 2 student counsellors attending placement together. I know Brisbane branched out at this on the second term because they could cover more students if they came on different days, but generally speaking, there should be 2 of you together, and there's very valid reasons for that, which is that you support each other during this. It's stressful being on placement at the best of times, but being on placement when you're pretty much left to your own devices is doubly stressful. So we didn't want you to be there on your own by and large, and that's why we've got 2 of you in there on the same day. So you support each other, you can share your preparation and debriefing with each other, particularly after each counselling session. You're new at this, you need to debrief after each session and just run through everything that happened so that you're clear that your practice was good. Right, the rest of that, I'm going to go fairly quickly, as I said. So the SAE, now I'm finding the typos that are from my new edits. The SAE manager on each campus that's supposed to say agency, sorry. SAE manager on each campus is the campus manager. Completely wrong. That's supposed to read the agency supervisor. So your supervisor on each campus is the campus manager. Now, some of you will be thinking, well, yeah, mine's very actively my supervisor, and others will be thinking, I never even see mine. I don't even know where his office is, right? So that's probably because they've offloaded it to the assistant manager or to someone else on campus. But as of next week, that's coming back to the campus manager with support from the assistant manager. So you might notice a change next week that your campus manager is suddenly a lot more involved than they were before. But as long as it's either the manager or the assistant manager, we're happy with that. They monitor your placement. They engage with you on a daily basis. You're only there 1 day a week, so they engage with you on a daily basis when you're there. They are both responsible for the welfare of all SAE students. So at no time do the SAE students become yours. Okay, now you're seeing them and they are your clients, but students often make this mistake when they're on placement of thinking that these are mine, I own them, and that I am responsible for everything about them, right? That's not the case ever because you're not qualified. So therefore the clients remain the responsibility of the managers. Now this is a change. We've had you, Shireen, as you're all aware, was the person who was looking after all the student placements and doing a fabulous job. She's not in that role anymore for you guys. It's now Dean Luke McMillan, and Luke's located on Brisbane campus, and he's now going to be the person who's overall accountable for all of you guys on placement. However, the day-to-day stuff is all down to your campus manager. Now, just to let you know, this is fantastic news. They're so impressed with the work you guys are doing that they are now going to hire a full-time SAE counsellor to be your supervisor and to also deal with clients, you know, offer counselling sessions, etc. So this is a big breakthrough. They were never open to doing that before, but your work, and particularly some of the crisis issues that you guys have managed, is what's finally got them to see that they need a counsellor. They really need one. You know the issues you're dealing with. So they're recruiting right now. I'm not sure which campus that person's going to be sitting on, but they're going to take over your daily management. So you'll be on Zoom with that person a lot, right? You'll be there with them every morning, every night, etc. But they're not here yet. In fact, by the time your placement's finished, you probably will be just starting. So I wanted to let you know that that's happened as a result of the great work that you've done. So congratulations. Whether you'll get to see the benefit of it, maybe not. So for now, this training is all about the situation you're in right now. So Luke is the person who's overall accountable, but you can contact him direct. If, for example, you can't get what you need or the support you need or the questions answered, you could try him. But if I was you, I wouldn't be calling him. I'd be calling your placement coordinator, because chances are your placement coordinator is going to answer the question for you way better than Luke is. If you're on Melbourne campus and you're calling Luke with a question, what are the chances he's going to know the answer? I think you'll get the answers from your campus manager and from ACAP faster than you'll get them from Luke. But he is still the one who's responsible. So his phone is there. If he's not available, call your placement coordinator. We've already been through recruitment and orientation, so you don't need to worry about that. Now, you should all have had an orientation the same as a new teacher gets. So I'm going to get you to raise your hands now. Deanna, I can't see oh, you can't either. Nobody can on a shared screen. So what I'll do is get you to write in the chat only if you had no orientation, because if you've had no orientation, you need one, and we'll arrange it for you. So just pop it into the chat so that Deanna can see who we need to talk to get you oriented to SAE policies, processes, etc. That should have happened at the beginning. There's now an appendix that says what you're supposed to cover in orientation, in case you're wondering. The start and finish dates, you all know that. We don't need to talk about that. Attendance, you should be all well aware that you can only miss 2 days of placement without express permission from your placement coordinator to miss any further days. It's really, really important to the agency and the clients. They're set up and expecting that you'll be there. Now, there is required reading. Some of you may have not been aware of this, but we pulled together some really good resources. When SAE told us the kind of issues that their clients typically present with, we pulled together a whole lot of readings and resources for you so that you could be up to speed with the kinds of things that might walk into your room. There's some good articles on Asperger's and some other elements, anxiety, etc., that often show up. So that's all kept in the SAE Dropbox. I hope to goodness you all know what the SAE Dropbox is and that you've all been in there and looked at the resources, because if you haven't, you just missed out on all of the work that was prepared by the pilot group of students. So there's everything in there for you to market your service, to be able to promote it. The posters are there, the flyers are there. There's a script for what to say at orientation, how to introduce yourself. There's a whole lot of really, really good resources in there. So make sure you spend time hunting through everything to see what's there. If you don't have access yet, and I hope you do, the way you get it is by contacting, I'll just contact Aaron, he'll sort it out for you. You have to be invited to a Dropbox to be able to access it. So that's, if you just say, please give me access to the SAE Dropbox, Aaron will sort that out for you. Daily supervision. So in the morning, ACAP student counsellors should ensure they arrive early, prepared and ready for the day. You may prepare together or share the tasks and arrive with your part of the preparation ready to share. You must check in with the SAE manager or assistant manager early in the day and run through your preparation with them. Now, you don't need to say the client's names. You know how to protect privacy. You've been talked to about that. You do need to say, I've got 3 clients coming to see me today. For one of them, I've seen him twice already. He's dealing with some anxiety issues, but it's all good. I'm on top of it. The other one is new. I don't know what that's going on with that one. I'll find out today and make sure I do all my check forms, my intake with them, etc. And the third one is blah, blah, blah. So you would give them the general flavour of what you're dealing with. You would let them know how you prepared. You might say to them, I spoke to my clinical supervisor about this one because last week there was a problem with this, that and the other. She said I need to take a different tack and try this, so that's what I'm going to do with that one today. So you're not going into all the nitty-gritty counselling stuff because you don't need to. They're just listening for, does this student know what they're doing? Are they prepared? Have they done the work? That's what they're interested in. Okay, so that would be quite quick. You should also update them on your promotion work. Now, each one of you is halfway through your placement. If you haven't got 15 hours at a minimum. Really, you should be on track for 20 hours by now, or 23 hours if you're a bachelor. If you're not on track, you need to work urgently. This is now an emergency for you. We had 2 students last time who didn't get their hours done in time, and it was hard to come back and just drag the whole thing out. Much better to get your hours sorted out now. So make sure that you contact your placement coordinator tomorrow if you're not on track, because we're going to have to do some work with your supervisors to get things moving so that you can catch up, so you don't end up running late on your placement, because it doesn't work. So what else? Manager will remind SAE staff. So the managers are going to take on talking to all of the staff and the teachers about the counselling service. So they're going to let them know, a lot of people don't know what counsellors do or what you can help with. So you're going to provide the managers with the information they need to talk to the staff, particularly those frontline staff who are seeing clients all the time, or seeing students all the time, about the counselling service. If one of the people, their teachers or their SSO or whoever the person might be, someone they trust and know, if they say to that student, you know what, there's a counsellor here now, and I think it would be great for you to go and see them about this thing that you've got going on, right? Or you suffer from anxiety all the time, I think you could get really good relief and benefit from seeing one of the student counsellors. The chances of them coming are much higher when they've been referred directly by someone who they trust. But it's up to you guys to keep reminding managers and etc. about your service, and to have your little flyers. It might be a bookmark size, could be anything, ready to go to remind them. Okay. You should be attending student orientation, which was probably last week, which is a bit of a shame, to introduce yourself and your service. And you should be visiting the classrooms. Now, you obviously have to get permission to do that. It has to be lines all set up by SAE, but you should be dropping into the classrooms just to say hello and say, this is what I do. You've got to reassure them it's 100% confidential, and see what you can do. You only do one-to-one counselling. Now, there was a request in the pilot for someone to run I think it was a mindfulness group at lunchtime. That's fine if you want to do mindfulness, meditation or stress relief, but you shouldn't really be doing any other groups, because it's going to take too much of your time, and you need to be seeing clients one-to-one. That's really the aim of the game of the placement. Then before you leave for the day, you must meet with one of the SAE supervisors. Doesn't matter which one. But you need to debrief and tell them what happened during the day, generically, right? Saw that client, that session went really well, but there's some stuff I need to find out more about. He's got this issue with blah, blah, and I don't know much about that, but I'll take it to my clinical supervisor. Whatever you're going to say to debrief before you go home. Now, if you've had a really stressful client, or someone who gave you curry during the session or was difficult in any way or whatever, you need to debrief that before you leave. Don't take that home to your husband or your wife or your children. You've really got to leave that in the placement. And the best way to do that is simply talk about it, right? You don't need to say the name of the client, but debrief it before you leave. So you're going home clear and with a really clear list of what you're taking to clinical supervision, okay? If you have a concern at the end of the day, and you think, I really need to talk to someone about this, I need to talk to a counsellor about this. My clinical supervisor is not available on Tuesdays because she told me, so I need to talk to someone. Call ACAP, right? Not after 5. Call ACAP before 5. We will find you a counsellor to talk it all through with, so that you're not leaving with questions and worries. We don't want that to happen to you. Okay. Good. Requesting extra support. Should the SAE supervisor be concerned? This is for them, right? They might say to you, I want you to contact your clinical supervisor about that. I think that's a big deal and you need to get some help with that. They can say to you, I want you to get more help with this. Call ACAP and get some help, okay? Now, week 5, you should have all had your mid-placement review. If you have not yet had your mid-placement review, please write that in the chat and Deanna will follow up with you tomorrow, because you're late, and that's very problematic. So we'll get that sorted out for you. The Dropbox, as I've mentioned, everything is in there. Please make sure you take the time and comb through it to see what's there, because I'm sure you'll find a couple of gems that you can use. Now, this one I'm going to leave to you guys, because we're not going to arrange this for you. But the last lot of students, when they got together and talked about what they were doing in their various campuses, they found it really useful, because you're the only ones who get it. You're the only ones who are working with what you're working with. So if you would like to arrange to catch up once a fortnight or whatever you want to do, just to share how it's going, share what you've got, your new ideas, share your new poster, whatever it might be, I think that's a really good idea, but I'm not going to organise it. So you'll need to organise it with each other. If you are willing to set that up, just email Deanna or leave a thing in the chat to say, I'll set that up, and Deanna will send you everybody else's email address. Now, students, if you're not happy with Deanna sending your email to the person who's going to set this group up, then you need to just let Deanna know that you don't want to be included. But I think it would be nice to be included. Give it a go and see what happens. It's an idea. Promotion of the student counselling service to clients. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the fact that you need to be doing this. Flyers, bookmarks, announcements, information for teachers and staff. Anything that you develop, you need to drop it into the Dropbox, right, and share it with your fellow students. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need people spending hours trying to get the thing to look just right on the flyer, and it's very time consuming. Much better to just everybody share everything, throw it in there. Now, if you're not seeing a minimum of 2 clients, well, this was by last term, if you don't have your 15 hours minimum, and I'd be going for 20 just to be on the safe side, you'll call your placement coordinator tomorrow to work out how we're going to get you up to speed. You're already in your clinical supervision. You should be starting your new group. You'll be in weekly supervision now, so that'll make an enormous difference to you. You get double the support that you've been getting. I think that's really important. We're also going to send this handbook to the clinical supervisors. Deanna, can you make a note that I just said that, please? So they can read about your placement and try to understand your placement and how it works. That'll help, rather than you trying to explain everything to them. Right? Now, you will hear there may be some clinical supervisors, particularly if they're new, who will say, what do you mean you don't have a counsellor on site? Right? You are not required to have a counsellor on site. That's not a requirement of any ACAP placement. Right? That's why we have clinical supervision so regularly and for so long each week, because you're getting the supervision of your practice, right? So you do have a supervisor, right? I don't want to hear any more stories about students who don't have any supervisor. It's not true. You do have a supervisor. It's the campus manager, and you have a secondary supervisor. It's the assistant manager, right? And they are legitimate. They are perfectly eligible to be supervisors for an ACAP placement. There's just some people who don't know that yet. So it's okay for you to say, no, it's fine. It's all been approved by ACAP. It meets all requirements. If there's any problem with that, just let one of us know and we'll talk to the clinical supervisor and work it all through. Paperwork you all know about. Your learning contracts, I hope they're all signed off and approved. If they're not, you have a problem because you're months late. Mid-placement reviews should all be done. The final placement report. Now, don't leave this to week 12, the last week, right? It's too late to get people to sit down and work it all through. I would bring it to the attention of your campus manager in week 11. No, not 11, week 10, at least 2 weeks before your end date. And I haven't got the calendar with me. At least 2 weeks before, send an email to your campus manager to say, my final assessment is due. You will find it in Sonia Online. Make sure that there's those 2 new managers. We're just checking that they are actually in Sonia. But everyone else should be. But let them know that they need to complete it in week 10, right? Then you have to sit down with them in week 11 or 12 to go through the placement report so that you get some feedback, okay, about what they've written, because they are the ones who are assessing you. They can't assess your counselling practice, obviously, but they're assessing everything else. So you want feedback from them, and you want a wrap-up meeting with them. You can leave it to week 12 for the meeting, but not the scheduling. The scheduling has to be done beforehand. There's a really busy people, as I'm sure you've found out. So make sure you don't leave that too late. Working with SAE, there's an SSO on each campus. There are student advisors. So it's very important for you. We actually had a placement at SAE about 3 years ago, and they cancelled because the student who was on placement there, this was somewhere, I can't remember which campus, got involved with SAE issues. So a client came to see them complaining about what was happening in their classroom. The student told them that they needed to make a formal complaint about what was happening in their classroom and all this kind of... No. If any client brings you SAE college-related matters, classroom matters, teaching matters, disgruntled, failed, doesn't matter what it is, the only words you're going to say to them is, you need to take that to your student advisor, okay? Don't get into it. Don't talk about it. You can talk about the anxiety they're experiencing, but not the issue itself. Very, very important. It's critical to the success of your placement relationship, and you need to be mindful of your own compliance. And plus, if there are two of you in a placement and you hear your buddy saying something that you know is outside the boundaries, make sure you correct it. Now, this is for managers. They know that if there is an issue with one of you, I think we would have already heard about it, so I'm pretty confident about this. But if you're interested, that's the process that the managers will follow if there are issues with any of our students on placement. Now, your intake form and case notes, hopefully you're all aware that you have an intake form that has to be filled in with every new client. And your client notes, at the moment, they're being kept in password-protected files on SAE drives. The access for that is going to be changing to Luke, so Shireen won't have access anymore because it's not part of her role anymore, but it is part of Dean's role. Not Dean, why do I call him Dean? Because he is the Dean. Luke has no reason to access your client notes except if he's subpoenaed, okay? So he needs to be able to get to them, but I promise you he's not looking at them. But your clinical supervisor is very interested in your client notes, so make sure that you're bringing your client notes to clinical supervision. What tends to happen is that you have one client who is really, really tricky and difficult, and you spend your whole clinical supervision session just focusing on that one client. Try to remember to cover all of them over time and to present as many of your client notes as possible, because that's how you get better at it. Your clinical supervisor will give you guidance on keeping good notes. So there's your instructions. They're in the handbook for what to do for the first session. Now, it's really important that you're using their photocopiers and scanners, I presume. Very important that nothing ever gets left on a scanner or a copier. So take extra care with that. We actually know from experience, we work in a corporate environment, right? It's amazing what can be found on a printer or a scanner. So don't get caught with that. Complete the client notes after each session. Try not to leave all your notes till the end of the day. It's a really bad practice because your clients will start to merge a bit in your head. So make sure you're trying to do it after each appointment if that's possible, and it's not always, I understand that. Now we come to the one that I want to spend the most time on. This is what to do if I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. So some of you have had experience of this, and you might be able to contribute at the end in the question period about, your experience and what you found and how you found it worked for you and anything you've got to contribute. But this is being very specifically written for SAE. Now, I've just had this approved by our head of school, Professor O'Hara, and by the senior lecturers at ACAP. I'm going to go through it as it is, but they've made one suggestion. So I want you all to make a note in your diaries to go back into the Dropbox next week and print this page. This is going to be a separate form. It's in your handbook, but it's also a separate form. So print the separate form again next week, because I have to edit it following the feedback that I just got. And you'll probably see why as we go through. I'm going to go through this slowly with you now. It's a bit of a mind thing. It's not simple, but it is straightforward if you follow the steps. So, pay some close attention here and make sure you write down all your questions. Here we go. So should a client present with suicidal ideation or oops, I forgot to share the screen again. Sorry, hang on. There we go. Should, with suicidal ideation, or tell you about a situation that clearly places them or another person at imminent risk of harm, you need to follow the process below as appropriate. Now, you're students, but you're working with clients. So do you know exactly what's appropriate in every single situation? No. And the senior counsellors today told us that they don't always know exactly either. You've got to just take it as it comes, all right? But we want you to have a process to follow. The main thing for you to know is a student counsellor is not to act alone or without support, okay? That'll make more sense as we go through. In the drop box, there's a suicide risk assessment form. You should complete that if the person is suicidal, and that will show you all did this in training, I'm presuming. I've been told that you covered this in your ethics unit and that you covered it in your mental health unit. So you should know how this process works, and you may not. So we can always get someone to run it through for you again if you're unsure, but let's keep going. After you've done the suicide risk assessment form, takes a lot of skill to fill in, right? Because you've got to create that space of trust where they're willing to talk to you and give you honest answers. So it's there for you. It's not a magic bullet, but it's a very good place to start. If the client is at immediate risk of harm, seek the client's permission to inform the campus manager that there's a problem and that you need help immediately. If the client agrees, call the manager or the assistant manager if the manager is not available immediately, and ask them to join you in the counselling room to work together to support the client and ensure they are safe. Now, SAE has a crisis plan. So if they're in a classroom and a student suddenly becomes psychotic and the teacher calls the manager and says, got this psychotic student, don't know what to do, they've got a crisis plan. They know exactly how to deal with that, right? And that's the crisis plan that this is referring to. If you ask the manager to come in to work with you with this client who's imminent risk of suicidal harm, they are going to follow their crisis plan because that's what they're trained to do and that's what they are supposed to do. Now, that could involve calling the police, calling an ambulance. If it was bad enough, easily could do that. It could happen in a classroom as well. It's no different because it happens in the counselling room. However, if it's, in this case, it may involve a mental health issue that you need to call your local CAT team. Now, for those of you who are not aware of what the local CAT team is, you need to get up to speed really fast on that one. This is the mental health support team that are in every state. They have a different phone number in every state, but they're often in regions as well. So you need to find out where the CAT team for your region is, and you need to have their number at hand all the time. But the manager, now on the manager's crisis plan, it may include taking the student to see their GP and accompanying them. SAE do that. You don't do the accompanying. That's not your job. You're not an employee, right? You're not covered to do that kind of stuff. That's out of your hands. That is an SAE employee's job to accompany a student to the GP or to the hospital. That's an SAE job. Now, they might ask you to do it. I'm saying to you, say no. Just say I can't. I'm not allowed to because I'm not an employee. And then they will get someone else to do it. But they'll follow their crisis plan as they are supposed to. So it's out of your hands from that moment on. It's now the manager's role, right? The manager may not think to call the CAT team because that's probably not on their crisis plan. You can recommend that if you think it's suitable, just say, we could call the CAT team and ask for their advice or their help. And you can do that, right? Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky, because if you were in a placement in an agency that provides mental health services or that provides welfare counselling services, the client has walked in the door of the agency specifically seeking a counselling service. So there's no confidentiality required between you and your supervisor there at all, right? You tell them everything, you get them involved, they tell you what to do, absolutely fine. But you're not, you're in a college and the student comes to the college for education services. That's the primary reason why they come there. Counselling is an extra service that's available, but it's not part of their enrolment. It's different, right? Now, if they go to the SSO, the services officer or the advisor, any of that, that's included in their enrolment. That's all part of that. Counselling's a bit different. Some of you may have been to see the ACAP student counsellor here on your campus. So you know that service that you receive from the ACAP student counsellor is utterly confidential from ACAP. Not ever, ever, ever would any of what happens in that counselling service ever be shared with ACAP staff. Even if they have a crisis and they have to call an ambulance, they just call the manager on the campus and say, please call me an ambulance. And the manager goes, okay, right away. That's it. There's no discussion about what's happening, which student is it, why is it happening, what led to this? No. So it's the same with you guys. So the client is entitled to decline. They might actually say to you, no, I don't want you to tell SAE about this. You told me this was confidential, right? I don't want them to know that I'm thinking of killing myself, right? So they might actually say, no, don't tell SAE about it. Chances are slim that they'd say that, but in case they did, you need to be ready. Now, in this case, the student counsellor must protect the client's confidentiality from SAE and also ensure that they report the issue immediately, okay? So saying that you're not going to tell SAE what's going on doesn't mean you're not going to tell anybody. You are going to tell somebody. Believe me, you're going to tell somebody, a qualified person, as soon as possible. But it can't be SAE unless the client gives their approval. So let's just do that little bit again. See this? If the client is at immediate risk of harm, seek the client's permission to inform the campus manager that there's a problem and that you need help, right? So how would you do that? Well, the first thing you'd have to do is to say to the client, you know I'm a student counsellor, right? So because you signed that on the form when you first came in that told you I'm the student counsellor. There's a couple of rules about being a student counsellor, and one is that whenever I have a client who is dealing with the big issues that you're dealing with, I'm not allowed to do this on my own. I actually have to get some help, okay? So what I'd like for you to agree to is for me to go and get the campus manager, and we'll bring him in, and he's going to help you work through this, all right? Now, if they say, oh, do you have to? And you could say, yeah, I'm really not allowed to deal with this on my own. Then they might say, well, all right, if you have to, that's fine. Or they might say, no way, I only came here because you told me it was confidential, right? I don't want them to know. In that case, you have to go to option B, right? So let's scroll down and see what happens if the client was to say, no way, you're not going to tell SAE. You can still not act alone. You still have to get support. Okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to explain to the client that as a student, are required to seek the support of a qualified person, and explain the options to the client. The options are that you will call your clinical supervisor, but if unanswered, or if they answer the phone, you could put them on speakerphone and say, I'm here with client XYZ, and he's just told me XYZ, so I'm calling for some support. Are you available to support me with that? And they might say, I can't, I'm at work, I just stepped out for a coffee. please call whatever. They might say ACAP. Now, in that case, there's 3 numbers here you can call. You're only going to call one of them. You're not going to be on the phone for 20 minutes trying to find someone, okay? Just pick one and good luck with which one it is. Most of us are there most days, okay? So you'll get one of us, we hope. All you say to your placement manager or your coordinator, whichever one you want to call, is, hi, I'm just here with a student and we have a very serious issue that I'll need some support with. Could you please organise a senior counsellor to come on the phone with me now? That's all you need to say. And the ACAP person will say, absolutely, give me a minute. And then they'll put you on hold because they've got to go and dial 20 numbers to find where there is someone. And then they'll either conference you in or they'll work out somehow that that person's going to call you immediately and that person will support you with this client. Now, if that doesn't work, or you could actually, even if it's serious enough, you could just skip both of those and call your local CAT team because they're a mental health hotline. That's what they exist for. They will always answer the phone and they will always help you. Right? Just explain to them that you're a student counsellor, that you have a client with you at the moment who's just told you XYZ and that you're calling for some support. Could they please support you in helping this client? And then put them on speakerphone and then you just stay with them and support them through the conversation. You shouldn't need to say much because the CAT team's taking it from there. Now, they will conduct the assessment and they will come to their own conclusion about what the appropriate action is in this case, and you will do whatever the CAT team says to do. If it's call an ambulance though, it's now out of the client's hand. They just lost the right to confidentiality because they signed that off on their permission form anyway, on their confidentiality form. But if you have to call an ambulance, then you're calling the manager, no holds barred there, okay? If they say no, there's no need to call an ambulance. This is not an imminent risk, so I think Joe needs to go and make an appointment with his GP tomorrow and get some crisis work counselling booked in through your GP. Then they'll help Joe make the plan for how they're going to do that, etc. So you take all the notes about what has to happen and then you're done, right? Because the CAT team now have this person. They're in their books. They've got them registered. The CAT team now owns them. Okay, and they're going to follow up with them or whatever the CAT team does, right? This is their full-time job. Now, if you're unable to get the CAT team, this has never happened, by the way. I don't know how it could happen, but if it did happen, call Lifeline and tell them what's happening and that you need support dealing with the client, okay? So there's really good options. There's no way it could ever happen that you've got no support, if given the amount of support that you've got. So that's how you're going to deal with it. You're going to see it through to a safe conclusion. As I said, if ambulances or police are involved, you are going to get the manager. You are not making those calls yourself. Okay, good. It's a lot to take in, I know. We'll just finish this and then I think I'll open it up for questions, all right? Inform the ACAP placement manager immediately, or that could be your coordinator because they'll inform their manager, and your clinical supervisor as soon as possible, that the incident occurred and how it was resolved or managed. Now, you know how to maintain confidentiality throughout this whole thing. There's no need to ever divulge the client's name throughout this whole thing, except to the CAT team, etc. Obviously, you would there. But for most of the rest, you just normal maintain confidentiality. Always contact your ACAP clinical supervisor or ACAP placement manager before you make a mandatory report. We've had 2 incidences of students who have called the police to report abuse without consulting anybody. Please don't do that, right? That's really, really bad practice for a student. Really important you talk to someone, probably us at ACAP. When the incident has been managed, call Luke. Let him know what happened and how you managed the incident. Now everybody's covered. Please do not discuss the issue or the SAE student with any other SAE staff. It's very important that you don't do that. If anything needs to be followed up before you will be there next week and cannot wait, you have to discuss this with the client and agree on the plan for how the client is going to get the support they need from other services. That could be their family, their GP, it could be the SAE welfare staff. The client must ask for this support from the other sources, not you, because that's getting into case management, okay? And that's not done by you. That's done by the SSO on campus. The student counsellor can help the client work out what they're going to say, but you would not make the calls, okay? Then ensure your client notes are detailed and checked by your clinical supervisor. Ensure the notes are saved securely, as you know. Manage your self-care. Honestly, this is so stressful for you as a student counsellor. Don't try and cope, right? Call someone, debrief it, get it out. Blah, 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 this happened and then that happened. And then, and I didn't know. And I was do the whole lot, okay? It's really, really important. We can provide you with a staff member to do that with. So call us and we'll put you through to a staff member and you can do your debrief. A counsellor, I mean, not a professional staff member. All right, that's a whole lot of stuff. So now I'm going to stop talking and it's your turn to start talking. So who would like to start? Oh, you all think you're on television, don't you? You all think you're watching television. No, this is the bit where you get to talk. Adam, you might like to start for us because you've got some stuff you can share with the others.
I'd just say that it's nice to have something to follow now. I had a couple of suicidal clients and didn't have any guidelines to follow, which made it very stressful and very difficult. Many phone calls being passed around, many different people, and feeling very, very unsupported. It was quite bad. So these guidelines should hopefully fix that. It's a shame they weren't in existence before. That would have been quite useful.
Yeah, they actually were, but we hadn't communicated clearly to you guys about that. So it's our fault. I apologise, Adam.
Yeah. So yeah, those guidelines seem quite comprehensive now, which is good.
Great. So is there anything else you want to just hand over, words of wisdom or tips that you learnt, or how you handled it personally yourself, how you debriefed, anything like that?
I think how I handled it personally was, even though it's quite shocking what I was hearing, I was very aware that just by sort of sitting with them and trying to find out more, you were doing so much. Like with each like minute that passed, you were sat with them, you were doing so much to help them that you shouldn't panic too much about how slow the process goes or anything. Just sort of staying with them and engaging them, providing them. In the cases that I was involved in, they've been let down by mental health practitioners previously. So just by sitting with them, helped them out immensely. And also when they told me that they'd had mental health practitioners that weren't so good, I was asking them why they weren't so good and then making sure that I was sort of tailoring what I was doing to be very different to what they'd received and didn't like previously. And with the self-care, just the clinical supervisor that I've got on campus is really good. So she was really, really helpful. And I went out for a couple of pints after as well. And that was, you just need to like find a way of unwinding and sort of relaxing and letting off a bit of steam, because otherwise it can be really troubling for you. Well
done. Great. And you handled it brilliantly, right? It was amazing how great you were, considering how unsupported you felt. You were great. We were very, very impressed. You're a bit of a legend now. So amongst the people who worked with you. Okay, great. Now we have any questions at all about process, about anything I've said. Now's your chance.
I've got a question, Dee. It's Adrian. Just a question about Skype. I know in the ACAP guidelines it says once you're over your 40 hours you can then provide Skype calls. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It doesn't meet PACFA's requirements. That's why you've got to get your 40 first. Well, and, you know, when we say get your 40 first, we actually mean, say you've got 20 and there's opportunities to do Skype. You should do it, but just keep it in the other column, right? And the first column gets to 40 and then move the whole lot over.
Okay. So I was just having a question then regarding that. If I was to provide Skype sessions, how do I go about getting confidentiality, that informed consent to begin with, if it's not on paper?
Yeah, you should email it to them and get
Okay.
it back, signed and back before you start your first session.
All right.
Okay.
Wonderful. And just another quick question regarding the case notes. When we leave our placement from SAE, do we just leave the case notes open in our shared file for Luke? Do we get to take a copy of those, or are they SAE's property?
They belong to SAE. They're SAE's property, just like they would for any other agency. The only reason you would take a copy would be if you needed it for your assignments. And the only reason, and then you would never have it identified. You'd never have the client's full details on it.
Okay.
Now, Luke, while he's the only person who's going to have access, he's not going to look at them, I promise you. He's not interested, right? But but they do need to be kept by law in case they're ever subpoenaed. Now, when our next batch of students come in, if they're dealing with the same client, they need your client notes to see what the history is and what's happened. Nothing worse for a client than to have to start again, and it's from the beginning. Okay.
All right. Wonderful. Thanks, Dee.
More questions? Man, I must have done a good job. You sure? Okay, now I'm training the supervisors next week. So hopefully everything that I've just told you will just come seamlessly into position and will all work. But it's highly unlikely. There'll be a few things along the way that are glitchy, but that's okay. Call your coordinator, just tell them what's happening. We'll work out if we need to call the campus to get it worked out for you. But I hope that this helps bring clarity. Now, before we go, I just want to go around to each one and have a comment from all of you about how your placement's going, what you're finding is the best and the worst things about it, or something like that. Let's start with Andrew. Just a comment.
Can you hear it?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. The best.
Which campus, Andrew?
Brisbane. Yeah, Brisbane. So, look, I like the support. We. I don't get to see the managers so much, the ones that you speak of that we should be seeing. But there's a guidance counsellor there who used to be in the room next door, and she gives wonderful support. Annette, and she's always available, for a chat. See her in the morning, see her in the afternoon before I go home. So look, there's many bests. I think the list would be fairly extensive and a little bit boring, but I don't really have any worsts. Did you say worst, best, and worst?
Well,
Yeah. Look, I don't have a worst, and I'm probably halfway there, to the 40, and I probably need to get out and spruik a bit, I think, because I think from my experience first semester, they trickled in, so
okay.
I think I have to get a sandwich board out or something and maybe drag people in if they don't want to go. No?
Yeah, be careful. The only thing is, yes, you need to promote generally, but no, you can't say, no, I hear you've got a problem, you should come and see me, right?
No, come on, I wasn't going to do that.
No, I know. This has happened in other placements.
Yeah. But it's and the only thing I worry about with SAE sometimes is it's all bound, so it's a finite box, and the client base is static, so I get a little anxious. I think about meeting the hours towards the end of the month because of that.
Yep. So the best way to get your hours is to get people referring their students to you, right? So after the training next week, I don't know what day it's going to be. I think it might be Wednesday. Your manager should be well and truly across the fact that they need to be supporting you by referring students to you. You shouldn't have to go out sandwich boarding. That's ultimately how we'd like it to be. And will you have to? Yeah, probably. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Thanks, Steve.
good job. Thank you. All right.
All right. Thank
Terry.
you.
Terry, just a very brief comment.
I'm at Sydney campus. I'm in Chippendale. The only issue again is client numbers. The SSA on our campus actually does counsel, so she counsels students Monday to Wednesday and then on Friday. So it's pretty slim pickings at the moment. We're very worried about gathering our hours. We've done orientations, flyers. I speak to staff members. So
can you write that in an email?
We're going to need some help.
Terry, can you just write in an email that your SSO is doing the counselling? Is she a qualified counsellor?
Yeah, she's actually from ACAP as well. She studied at ACAP.
Great. So what I'm going to recommend is that she become your supervisor and start funneling her clients to you guys. So, but I'll need to set that up with the manager. So can you put an email, just write me an email explaining exactly what happens, and I will, I'll make sure that she is your chief source of referrals. Okay.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Good. All right. Now you need to chase this up from me, right? So just drop me an email saying, how did you go with Sydney campus getting those referrals or whatever? Follow up after you email me. All right.
Okay. Should I contact Aaron at all? Because I was going to call Aaron tomorrow because we'll go. Amber and I go tomorrow. Yeah.
All right. Good. Call Aaron. He'll call me. He'll chase me, and we'll get it for you. We need to act very quickly on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
With Amber next.
I actually do my placement with Terry, so I think she explained a lot of what's going on with our placement at the moment. So
we need to act on that urgently. So thanks for letting us know. And we'll
absolutely, yeah.
Great, thank you, Adrienne.
Hi guys. I'd just like to say that I'm really grateful to have the experience at SAE. I think it's wonderful. I enjoy that you get to see the clients in the hallway, and it's you know, a very different experience, I think, than we would have gotten elsewhere.
Are you in Melbourne?
No, I'm in Brisbane with Andrew.
Oh, great. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really enjoying it.
Okay, fantastic. Adam.
The variety of clients is really good. That's probably the best. The worst, there were definitely problems with hours on our campus as well. I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to see quite a few clients, and I had some referred to me because they wanted to speak to a male, and I was the only male on there. But we have had one counsellor who had to drop out just for not getting enough hours, and I think it was Andrew that said there's only a certain amount of people that are there. Like once so many have been seen, it's hard to envisage how you're going to actually get to see enough people. So that would be the only drawback. But I've been fortunate that it's not affected me, but I have seen it affect others.
Okay. So if you've got some ideas about what we need to do to help, let us know. Like, for example, splitting the days, or maybe we should only have one counsellor on the site. You know,
on Melbourne campus, we ended up splitting it up. So I'm on my own on a Tuesday now, and somebody else took over on a Thursday, and it just meant that we could cover more ground, and with the different timetables, it just meant we were able to see more people and be available more often.
Okay, good. Thank you. Right. Anyone else who's got some ideas or suggestions, please email them to your coordinator, because we're open to everything. So let us know. All right. I think, is that all the students now who've spoken? Yes. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I know it's after hours. It was hard to organise, and you really had to move some stuff around to do it. Thank you to my wonderful team for doing that as well. But very much appreciated. Any questions, please, keep the communication flowing. Let's get those problems fixed so that you can relax about finishing on time. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Dee. Bye, everyone.
Yes, bye.
Deanna, you've captured the chat? You got it. Great. Thank you, because I haven't looked at it. So, all right. If you want to let me know anything that happened that I didn't know about during that, as far as chat goes, etc., tomorrow, that would be good. And we'll follow up with those other ones. It sounds like Melbourne have a problem with hours, and Sydney does.
That's Sydney, Dee. That's Sydney, not Melbourne.
Yeah,
Very-
Melbourne is now down to 2 students. So we've got Gabby and Adam.
And they're doing
Sylvia's just left, and Brooke is just going to be there for about 3 to 4 weeks as a volunteer.
right.
So that does leave out just 2 on separate days. So I don't know whether, I mean, I know separate days is working well, but they don't have the support.
Yeah, we're going to have to ramp it up with Sydney. So we might have to go down for a visit, Aaron, see this new campus and meet with Rad and his new off-sider, because what's his name there anymore? Rain.
I was going to say, so because they were talking about hiring a counsellor and now they've got one.
I know. How weird is that? We didn't know that.
Well,
Nobody mentioned that.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, I actually called Radovan today because I was inquiring about students for August, and he said, "Yep, 2 more students." And I was like chatting to him about his new campus, asking how it was, and that I need to come down, need an excuse to come down. And he said, "I'm sure there's some reason you could come down and visit our new campus." So I think we've got one now.
A very good one. All right. Thank you. You're wonderful. Good night, everyone. Thank you. See you tomorrow or whenever.
Okay.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye.
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 Bye.